My boss walks into my office on one Friday afternoon in 2016 in October, and he says, Nick, I want to do a Spartan race, and I want you to do it with me. And I looked at him and I said, no, no, fuck no. That an 8 to 10 mile trail run, that seemed awful to me. And with obstacles, I never had any intention of making myself that uncomfortable. But that's when I discovered the problem. I already was that uncomfortable. I had just gone through everything that I had just talked about. I was 2 years sober. All right. I had just been promoted at work. I had a new girl that's my now wife. Like, I was literally firing on all cylinders, and suddenly I was stuck and I was terrified of losing it all. And I realized that though I had been sober, I hadn't really done anything to change my life, to improve myself, to improve the quality of my life. I was still literally and metaphorically stuck on the couch. So I said yes to a race. And that's all I intended. I had no idea that I was going to be changing my lifestyle. Because obstacle course racing is a hobby for a lot of people. For me, it's a lifestyle. And it's a lifestyle that challenged me to be the very best version of myself in every single aspect of my life.
The following podcast is for entertainment purposes only and does not constitute medical advice or opinion. Audience discretion is advised. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of The Health King's Court, Ancient Wisdom, Modern Health. I'm your host, Zach the Health King. Today I have a very interesting guest with me. He's a motivational storyteller and a mental endurance coach. Being a 4-time cancer survivor himself and also a type 1 diabetic, he's a recovering alcoholic who became an obstacle course racer in defiance of it all. Refusing to accept his limitation, he's completed over 100 Spartan races, 6 major marathons, several ultras, and many other obstacle course and endurance events. As someone who's walked the path of a sales professional, he's an expert in propelling other achievement-driven professionals and leaders to overcome fear and rejection, push past their self-limiting doubts, and inspire them to take purposeful action towards their goals. He's a raw and passionate storyteller who holds nothing back when revealing who he used to be and the person he is now. A testament to the power of resilience with an unwavering belief in his purpose to overcome obstacles and inspire others to do the same, he delivers powerful and transformative speeches drawing from personal experiences to illustrate the extraordinary potential of pushing through adversity. And that is a Nick Klingensmith. Nick, welcome to the show.
Zach, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for coming, my friend. And you have a lot of stories to tell and a lot of things that have brought you to the here and now. But let's just start right off with that. Would you like to tell your story of what has brought you to the here and now and, dive into the adversity that you faced in the past that kind of molded you into the man that you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. Because as you mentioned, I'm a 4-time cancer survivor. I'm a type 1 diabetic. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I have 7 herniated discs from 2 different rollover fatality car accidents. I have sleep apnea. I have nerve damage in multiple areas. Let me see, I'm forgetting something. I almost died of meningitis, had a bad run with COVID. Terrorists once put a nerve gas bomb threat on my airplane. That has nothing to do with this, but it's still a good story to tell. And in the last 7 years, I've completed 98 Spartan races, 6 major marathons, and about 50 or 60 other endurance events and sufferfests. And throughout that experience is really where I have learned a lot of these lessons about myself and about purpose and resilience and adaptability and setting meaningful goals and taking purposeful action towards them. And probably one of the key lessons that I really adopted that I think is really going to be relevant to this conversation is that good habits are a gateway drug. Because my boss walks into my office on one Friday afternoon in 2016 in October, and he says, Nick, I want to do a Spartan race, and I want you to do it with me. And I looked at him and I said, no, no, fuck no. That an 8 to 10 mile trail run, that seemed awful to me. And with obstacles, I never had any intention of making myself that uncomfortable. But that's when I discovered the problem. I already was that uncomfortable. I had just gone through everything that I had just talked about. I was 2 years sober. All right. I had just been promoted at work. I had a new girl that's my now wife. Like I was literally firing on all cylinders. And suddenly I was stuck and I was terrified of losing it all. And I realized that though I had been sober, I hadn't really done anything to change my life, to improve myself, to improve the quality of my life. I was still literally and metaphorically stuck on the couch. So I said yes to a race. And that's all I intended. I had no idea that I was going to be changing my lifestyle because obstacle course racing is a hobby for a lot of people. For me, it's a lifestyle, and it's a lifestyle that challenged me to be the very best version of myself in every single aspect of my life. So when I signed up for that race, the first thing I did was I started setting the alarm for 5 o'clock in the morning. And so I'm waking up with intention. I'm having more time in the morning with my dog. I'm actually showing up to work alert and awake. And if I'm going to wake up consistently at 5 in the morning, I needed to go to bed at a fairly regular time. And at like 37 years old, I gave myself the first regular sleep cycle I had ever had in my entire adult life. So the subtle changes, they continue to add up because now I wanted to do more of these races. So I needed to learn how to recover. So I started a stretching routine. I wanted to feel better. So I started improving my diet. I wanted to develop my mental toughness. And so I started meditating. And so it wasn't like I woke up one day and said, I'm going to change my life today. It was these incremental steps of improvement. And, for the longest time, I mean, I used to be 240 pounds. I'm about a buck 85 right now. And I lost most of that weight before I ever discovered Spartan Race. I did most of that just by managing macros. But I never really paid that much attention to my food and to my diet until I went to Cuba. And my girlfriend and I and another couple, this is back in 2017, we went to Cuba for a couple of days. It was actually supposed to be a Spartan race, but it got canceled. And all the good Cuban food is in Miami because in Cuba, everything is literally from the backyard, 100% organic. There's no processed anything. It's a very poor country. Like they're not importing beef. Like it's what you get is what they caught. And so for 4 days, we ate well, but like very healthy. And then when we came back on that Monday, I remember saying, man, I just want to get like a really greasy, good pizza. Just can't wait. And we did. And I felt awful for days. And that was when it occurred to me that like organic isn't a trendy term. There's a real thing here. And so that's when I started making more of those incremental changes to my diet. And I can go on, but I figure figure we'll stop there for right now.
Yeah, man, you touched on a lot of essential points there in that it's about breaking cycles and everything happens in cycles, right? Everything happens in habits and cycles, and everyone finds themselves in some sort of rut. And it's just making sure that the one that you're in is a good one and bringing you closer to where you want to be. And you mentioned it as in the terminology of good habits are a gateway drug, and like one leads to the next and leads to the next. All of a sudden, you're living this great life. Yeah, that's so true. It's about creating an upward spiral in your own life. And when you start to get one area of your life down, it naturally will pull you up in the other areas if you at all care about that first one to begin with. And then you start to realize, I have all these different sides of myself and of my life and of my body and of my health that I need to attend to make sure all of them are able to succeed holistically. That's huge. And especially, I like your focus, both that you've said today and also in your other content that I've seen, and focusing on discomfort. Discomfort is a necessity. It's absolutely a necessity, and it's an inevitability. Life is hard. Life is going to have pain. The flavor of life is pain. It's unavoidable, but you can pick how you want to eat that pain. You can consciously decide, I choose to accept pain in this way and this way and this way, and then forge myself through those activities. Or you could choose to try to avoid it all and kind of duck your head in the sand. And that's going to be painful, perhaps even more, because then it's not worthwhile.
I would say that comfort is a deception. It's a liar because I thought I was comfortable when I was 45 pounds overweight. I thought I was comfortable staying too long in a bad relationship. I was too comfortable at a job that was a dead end for me. I felt this comfort zone without realizing that I had really created a prison for myself. And a lot of the conflict that we feel, a lot of that tension that people feel at night, and I know I'm speaking for myself here, but I am not the only one who feels this. It's because we do have the desire to explore. We have this inert, what's the word I'm looking for here? We'll just call it like a reflex for safety and for staying in comfort. But we're explorers. We are meant to explore and get up and do new things. So that tension is between knowing there's a better life ahead of us and resisting the steps to take it. And I'm glad you brought that up about pain, because I remember not too long ago, this guy sees me. My old office building, I used to throw my ruck pack on and do the stairs at lunch. And he was asking me about Spartan races. And he was like, can you get hurt doing those? And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, bro, like you can get hurt walking down the hall. Like you don't have to do things extreme, right? Like I've been hurt in a couple races, but I've done 100 of them. Like that's a 0.00 something percent chance of, there's no reason not to do something. And what I get it that we don't necessarily want a lot of pain, and oftentimes pain is telling us that there's something catastrophic about to happen. But more often than not, it's just a guidance system. And I don't know when we got it in our heads that it was something to be avoided.
Oh, absolutely.
Cost of admission.
It is certainly a guiding system, and all things have their equal and opposite, right? On the other side of pain is glory. On the other side of, risk is reward. And so, yes, perhaps you have gotten hurt on a couple of things on races, and perhaps you've healed from them entirely, or perhaps there's a bit of lasting pain. But the alternative to not pushing yourself physically in those ways or other ways, whatever someone chooses to do, is having your body slowly atrophy and wither away and have joint pain, have muscular pain, and organ failure, and all these things that come from the opposite of not pushing yourself physically in some sort of capacity. And so let's zoom out a little bit here and talk about why we are at the state that we're at in society, where people are so afraid of pain and people are so clinging to so-called comfort or the known, rather.
There are so many reasons, but let me just say a couple right now. And one, I'm going to blame. This does not apply to all doctors, but this applies to a lot of doctors. I was sitting at a meeting the other night, and this woman actually was describing how she had seen her doctor, and she was talking about some pain that she had, and his recommendation to her was to go rest. She didn't injure herself in sports, okay? She was in pain from immobility, from the muscles not working by trying to walk around. And this motherfucker told her to go rest. Like he just told her, go back to your bubble. All right. That is a problem. He should be recommending activity and motion and movement and get outside. When I busted my rib in a Spartan race 2 years ago, I fractured the cartilage, okay, not the actual bone. So when I went to the ER, they did an x-ray and it didn't show a break. So according to them, they had no evidence that I was injured. They gave me pills and sent me on my way. I didn't want pills. I hurt myself badly and I wanted someone to help me figure out how. So I went to the next ER. They took an x-ray. I said, you should take an MRI. They said, no, there's no break. Here's pills. They sent me home with pills. A lot of these doctors are drug dealers. They're not trying to help you get active and mobile. Their goals are different than ours. Their goals are to keep you safe in that bubble on the couch. So basically, it's validating these things. It's validating in our minds that discomfort is bad, that pain is bad. My knee, I write about this in my book, and I told people this all the time back in the day. I said, I'll never run again because of my knees. Bro, my knees hurt because I wasn't running. My knees hurt because I was 40 pounds overweight, and the only time I got up was to bowl, play pool, or stand at the bar. Like, of course my knees were going to hurt. I used to have to wear a knee strap when I played volleyball, and I would tape it up, all sorts of things. I used to wear these inserts in my feet from the plantar fasciitis. All those things are gone. I used to take 2,400 milligrams of ibuprofen, Aleve, naproxen every single day. I refuse to take that medication altogether now. Through holistic healing, through motion and activity, like part of the problem is that we have been fed bad information from people that we were raised to believe are, I don't know what the word I'm looking for here is, but that they wouldn't have their own agendas. We've been raised to trust them. So that's a big reason, in my opinion, is that we have been validated to do the wrong things.
Oh, absolutely. It's no secret that the standards of society lead people into nothing other than suffering and sickness, because that's what keeps the status quo of society operating. People that operate the society at the meta level can't have a bunch of healthy, vital young people and then older people out there thinking for themselves and questioning why things are the way they are. They simply can't have that. It simply won't do. And then of course we could talk about the more corporate side of things where yes, obviously there's a vested interest in pharmaceutical industry who then funds doctors through assorted avenues and has written the educational curriculum in the medical systems. So yes, certainly the doctors, whether they are nefarious or have the best of intentions themselves, if they've only been trained on symptom pill approaches, well, of course, that's all you're going to get within those avenues. And obviously, that goes within the whole structure that we've been built to live within mentally, in that what the doctor says is what goes, what the teacher says is what goes, this kind of worship of prescribed authority figures, whoever they may be, unquestioningly. And certainly that's only to the detriment of the person at the bottom when the structures, not only in who is existent within them, but who has designed them, are not necessarily your best friend. They're not necessarily looking out for you, the person at the end of that chain of information.
And
And
for
so,
sure, it's not that they all have, bad agendas by any means. In fact, my GP is the guy who spent all the time with me finding out what happened to my ribs. So like, and hasn't once offered me pills. Um, but a lot of times it's not their fault, to your point too. They're bought and paid for in terms of what they're allowed to do. They're highly regulated. And also they only have this much of a snippet. If you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So that's why I would not ever recommend someone to not listen to their doctors. They should listen to every one of their doctors as well as other people and make an independent decision for their life instead of just blindly accepting certain things as fact and allowing it to be an excuse to get in the way of living a better life.
yeah, and beyond the labels, I recommend people find good people to listen to, period, because I hesitate to blanket discount all professionals in any capacity these days, especially the more and more I do this podcast. I've been connecting with very interesting people within the official realms of authority that are themselves very intelligent on the way the body naturally works through their own independent research and knowing and knowledge and comprehension of the body, and just use the official avenues and licensure to be able to help people and do the real stuff. So there are absolutely gems out there in the assorted practicing capacities, but that's why it takes the due diligence to understand who you are going to listen to. Are you just listening to a robotic pill pusher, or are you listening to someone who, yeah, they're also a doctor just like all these pill pushers, but they actually understand what's happening and actually want to help? They are out there, but you need to find them. That's your work as an end user. Figure out who to go to. Don't just go, insurance recommended this person, so I go here. This is who we always went to, so I go there. Like, you have to do some work. There's going to be some pain. You have to do the pain of finding who to go to. But there are good people out there in traditional or conventional rather avenues as well. And so why do you think, however, people have fallen for it? Because if you were to go some time ago, I think, and just tell an average person, hey, ignore your eyes, ignore your ears, ignore everything that you feel and see and experience, and just trust this person, they'd probably tell you no. Who are you? Who are they? Why would I do that? Like, mentally, what do you think's going on that people have been susceptible to falling for this big trap?
I don't know that it's new, and it's probably not because, on the topic of holistic medicine, it might as well have been unheard of 30 years ago as far as like what people talked about. You know what I mean? Like it just wasn't back then. You had conventional levels of thinking, and it was just, I'm trying to think of like what we got served for food in the 80s. You know what I mean? Like it was we didn't have the information as readily available to us as we did before. And so we only got pushed by direct advertisers. And so why would we question things or challenge things, you know? And of course, there'd be some sort of trend at the time that some people would get into or not. But I don't think there was a fundamental understanding in our society at all. And I'm talking like 30 years ago of what health actually looked like. I didn't. I mean, well, then I was younger, but I mean, even 10 years ago, I didn't. You know, if I was more focused on my weight, and that's one small metric. Whereas now it's almost the other way. We have all of the world's information available to us at our fingertips. It does get a little bit overkill. And the problem is that we aren't really objectively challenging our own thinking when we look for the information. We typically seek validation of what we want to believe, have already been told, or already believe. So I'm gonna just say laziness. It comes down to it. And you know what? I won't even pick on other people. I'll just say for me, all right, it was about calories. Because when I was fat, I just wanted to not be fat anymore. So for me, it was about calories. And then I was at a decent weight for about 2 years or about a year or so before I actually found Spartan. And I was kind of happy with what I was. And I ran a little bit here and there, but I didn't really have a health goal, you know, and I really didn't understand the difference between like, I figured if I wasn't eating candy bars every day, I was eating healthy, even if I had a calzone for dinner. I didn't understand. Again, I was focused on certain things and not the right thing. So, and that was just lazy thinking. I mean, even now, I'm still like, there's so many more layers to this, you know, and obviously, you know, this is what you do. So I know that there's so much more to go down. I mean, I think I told you a couple of weeks before that, several months ago or last year, I started using Viome, gut health, intelligence company, something. But anyways, I have um, custom pills and supplements that I take every day now. Like, you know, we actually did like a sample and what was missing from my gut, will we have too much, et cetera, et cetera. Trying to not get into the details. Um, but again, like even on that, there are so many more layers that I can take of what foods work for me, what are my superfoods, what are not. And I think as long as I keep scratching the surface, I have a better chance at getting better as I get older instead of the other way around.
Yeah, and that's a very nice way to put it because we're all about optimizing our odds, right? Is anything guaranteed in life other than death? No. But can we do things to optimize our time here? Absolutely, and quintessentially. And can we absolutely know what is going to optimize ourselves? Perhaps not. But that scientific exploration of, okay, this seems logical. I've looked into this. This seems like a good idea. Let me try that out, do it for some time, see how you feel. Should I keep incorporating it or should I try something different? You know, that's what life is all about. That's what, you know, being healthy is really all about because our bodies aren't stagnant. So neither is how we should treat our bodies, right? What's good for us today might not be good for us tomorrow. And so that constant viewing or of reviewing of what we're doing is absolutely essential. And part of what you've mentioned a few times now is setting meaningful goals. What does that really mean to you? What does it mean to set a meaningful goal for oneself in the realm of self-improvement, be it physical, mental, or kind of a mix of the two?
Well, I'll put it this way. Getting in shape is not a meaningful goal. Getting healthier is not a meaningful goal. And here's why I know this, because everybody who's listening to this right now, who's ever said they wanted to, hasn't. That wasn't enough to take the action. And it's clearly an exaggeration, but for me, it wasn't. I hated how I looked. I hated how I felt. I hated the lack of energy. I had lack of self-confidence. Like, so that impacted the way I could, and then of course I would overcompensate. So that would affect personal relationships. Like it was this black hole, right? And you start creating this desperation of I'll never be able to make these changes. And it just gets worse and worse. But yet I wasn't quite there. And the thing is too, you see yourself in the mirror every day. So you don't always notice the impact of your slide, I guess, if you will, when you're getting out of shape. And for me, the wake up call was I had gone to Vegas with a couple of my buddies, and the three of them are in really good shape. And when we get back, I see a picture of us at the pool. Bro, first, I had boobs. Second, my stomach is way out to here. And the thing is, if I only grow out, not sideways. So I look solid from the front, and from the side, it was like three buildings leaning over. And I had to send this to them. And I was like, what kind of friends are you? Like, how did you not tell me this? And so that was enough for me to say, I have to make a change, because I'm looking at it and I was like, holy shit, who is that guy? I still keep that picture handy because I don't ever want to go back. But when I look at other pictures from back then too, there were pictures back then that I really liked, and now I look and I can see just how far I had gone. So I think a lot of it is that we don't see the physical impact. We can pretend all day that we don't care about it, but it does impact people. And even if, all right, I have problems, and I know I'm going to get myself in trouble with somebody for this, but I have a lot of problem when people give the whole, oh, you're beautiful in the inside speech. No, you're not. You might have a great personality, you might have a wonderful soul, but your arteries are clogged, like your O2 is bad, like you are actually jacking yourself up. So I don't care about the self-serving hallmark bullshit that you're telling yourself. You're actually hurting yourself. I don't care how you look. And like that's got nothing to do with it. But so that's a big thing, is to what is the impact of change. So for me to actually set a meaningful goal, though, is I had to set a weight and I had to put a plan behind it. And that was just enough to get me there. For this lifestyle, my meaningful goal is to overcome every obstacle, inspire others as they can too. But for someone who needs to make that big life change, they have to equate it to something. All right. Sometimes looking good is enough for somebody. Maybe it's not, right? Maybe they want more attention from the opposite sex to get validated. That's could be a driver for somebody. Maybe it's to stay alive longer for their kids, or to be actually active with their kids. Because I don't really care about how many years I'm alive for, but I want to make damn sure that I am able to enjoy the years that I'm alive for. That's a bigger driver for me.
Yeah, absolutely. You touched on, again, a lot of really interesting things there, in that the role your people around you played in kind of you coming to coming to grasp how far off you had gotten, right? And we're supposed to have that. The people around us should always be a good reference and someone that we want to take good example from. And you mentioned it right there, which is a very interesting point. You wish that they would have called you on your shit of being unhealthy. You wish that they would have either made jokes that brought it to your attention, or like healthy prodding and bullshitting around, or even just straight up said, bro, you're fat. What are you doing?
Yeah. Don't care about my feelings, care about my heart.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And this whole, like you mentioned, fat acceptance and glorification is only detrimental to everyone involved, especially those that are still fat and in need of that change in the other direction, because you're only kind of promoting them to go down that downward spiral farther and further to their grave, probably an early one at that.
This is where the bullies mess it up, because the bullies are the ones who go to make people feel bad about how they look, and that's not going to inspire them to make that change. And so it's like, I'm not trying to bully anybody, but it's no excuse. Like it's you who is suffering. You.
Yeah, I think there's a healthy place for bullying. I think it serves a natural purpose, right? And obviously there's unhealthy extremes, obviously. Don't be, ridiculous about what I just said. But speaking for men specifically and males specifically, bullying gives you something to stand up against. You have to get yourself together to stand up against it. Now, obviously, there's extreme degrees of bullying that could be completely inappropriate, but a healthy amount of playful banter and just schoolyard level bullying, that makes a lot of good men. Those that are able to forge themselves up and out of it. I was bullied. I was not always the man
poking at me. Sure.
What's that?
I said, if it's my friends are the ones poking at me, sure. If it's a stranger poking at you, like that's not going to be a healthy situation for anybody.
Well, I'm not saying it's like a healthy situation. I'm saying it forges good men, because out of that's the adversity to stand up against, to make yourself stronger, to not suffer from bullying. Nobody's going to bully you if you're big and strong. Nobody's going to bully you if you're the smartest person in the room and clearly more competent than everyone. So I think for men, bullying is something that gives you that fight and again, it's not going to be for everyone. I think everyone has a different level of perhaps inner strength and resilience and different things that might make them instead kind of go down. But I think bullying could be a positive thing in some regards, as controversial as that might be.
No, I appreciate the point. I got 2 points. One is a counterpoint, which is um, I believe it's more like Cobra Kai. Bullies make more bullies. And the second part, though, is that the part the sentiment, I agree with you. And take away the word bully, and let's just replace it with adversity.
Yeah.
Because absolutely, I was not born this way. I had to go through shit. I had to and you know what? I did have to get bullied, not to make me tougher, to make me realize I don't give two shits about those guys.
It made you mentally tougher.
And not for nothing though, it did make me a bully, and I bullied people too. And that's a part of me and I'm not saying I'm perfect now, because of course I don't care who says they don't. Everybody judges. Everybody's got a judgmental bone in them. It's just whatever.
There's no way to avoid it. That's human nature. There's two types of people. There's people that judge other people, and there's liars.
Exactly. That's not to say we're going to go gossip and want to put people down and make ourselves feel better, but it's just instinctive. Yeah. It's just, we do it. I judge myself too much, but that adversity makes us tougher. Having to face things, having to go through things makes us tougher if the person goes through it, whereas the ones who don't, and it's not static, right? It's dynamic, because there are many things that, I think I probably told you the first time around, I was a victim through most of my story. I look back now and see that I had cultivated a victim mindset almost my entire life. And for a long time though, it made me gritty. It was my armor. It was my defense, until later where it became my prison, and I really wasn't able to sort of break out from it. And that's when I realized that I had become a prisoner to my victim mindset, and I had to overcome that. And that was a decision. And that's what brings me to who I am now, but at the same time, there were times in a great deal of my life where I feel like I was just cowered in the corner saying, don't hurt me.
Yeah, that's a very interesting thing. Let's dive into that if you don't mind, because that's something that a lot of people find themselves within, a victim mindset of so many different things. So I'm a victim of my social class. I'm a victim of my race. I'm a victim of, my parenting style. I'm a victim of this, that, the other. Everyone's a victim. That's their identity. That's their label. That's how they introduce themselves. Oh, I'm a victim of this, disease, whatever. What do you think was what brought you into feeling that way and kind of resonating with that victim mentality? And what made you realize you had to switch it? And how did you kind of switch into a more empowered, responsibility taking mindset?
I can actually trace this to exact moment. And it was that when I was 6 years old, my dad left. Now, I grew up on an island. This was not an after school special, all right? He probably lived a mile down the road, but my mom was not capable of loving or caring for me. And so that was something I grew up real fast. And about a year later, though, she gave me up to my dad, who then we went and moved in with his fiance and her two daughters, and we got thrown out the next morning. So I got thrown out of two houses by two moms in 24 hours. And if that doesn't fuck you up as a 7-year-old, I don't know what does. But dad, who was in recovery, spent the better part of the next decade and a half making his own way through the world. And he would often vent his frustrations out on me. So as a young kid, I often was made to feel a burden, felt like I wasn't good enough. And a lot of people will kind of have that fear of rejection growing up, and they'll use it to become like perfectionists, and they want everybody to love them. I went the other way. I said, fuck you. I don't need your love. And so I had a side hustle in the second grade. I created this tough exterior for myself. I wasn't there was nothing physically powerful about me. So I was a wise ass. I was sarcastic, just always acted like this tough kid who didn't need you. And so that did stay with me for a long time as I grew up. And the thing is that as tough as I wanted to pretend I was growing up thinking it's me against the world, you can't feel it's you against the world unless you're a victim of the world. There's the paradox. You've been victimized of the world. Therefore, you are always on guard against the world. It's me against the world. I didn't realize this at the time, though, because again, it gave me this grittiness. So when I got cancer for the first time, I didn't want to tell anybody because I didn't want anyone feeling sorry for me. I didn't want anybody's sympathy. But again, what I didn't realize is that I was still feeling victimized by cancer. I talk about it in my book. I talk about it in my keynote, how that first night I went home and I'm staring in the mirror and I've got like puffy eyes and red cheeks. And I'm just looking back at this scared little kid whimpering to God, please, why? And I got mad. And I looked back and I said, fuck you. Fuck you. And I started screaming at the top of my lungs, my poor neighbors. All right. I'm beating on my chest, like, come and get me, cancer. I like threw a temper tantrum and I became defiant within those couple hours because I did not like seeing that I was a victim, that I was this helpless victim. And I said, no, I'm not. What I hadn't realized, though, that I hadn't changed my mindset. This was just the same thing, this tough exterior that I was putting on for this show. And it took all the things that I told you about already that I went through, everything from the cancer, the diabetes. All right, I lost my mom, I lost my sister. And about 7 months after I had been obstacle course racing, everything was awesome. Mind, body, spirit was progressing. Work was going good. I was really enjoying this stuff. And that's when I was in my second car accident where I got more herniated discs and nerve damage. My Jeep was badly injured, was hurt, whatever, damaged. There you go. The woman who hit me died. And although I was just sitting at a red light when she was hitting me full speed, the last thing that happened in her life was me. That night, my cat died of 12 years. I had nerve damage from the injury, from the accident that I didn't know what it was. And I found myself lying on the couch again, just wanting to give up. And I was trying to get myself back into it. And I was trying to train and I just was flat. And I was listening to some motivational video where some dude's yelling, do you want to be a victim or a survivor? Victim or survivor? And I'm like, these choices suck. And I was like, what's the point? What's the point? I've been a survivor my whole life, and here I am, still just barely surviving with more bad shit happening. What is the point of this? And so I got mad, really mad, just like that time in Milford. And I threw a temper tantrum, and I was like, there's no point. I am not a survivor. I am a warrior, and I am going to war. I will not be defined by my adversity, but rather my triumph over it. I will do shit that diabetics should not. I will live every day to stick the middle finger up to cancer. I will recover from alcohol and I'll help other people recover from alcohol. I will not let sleep apnea ever prevent me from doing the things that I want to do in my life. Whatever it is that stands in front of me, that's what I'm going to overcome. And that's where the mindset came from, is I realized I had been a victim all that time, that I hadn't overcome any of my adversity. I had only survived it. And surviving isn't enough.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people out there, whether they have a particular ailment that they can name or are just existing amongst their circumstances, they're living in that kind of survival mindset of, hey, I have to get through the day. Oh, I just have to get through the week. Oh, I just have to get through the month, through the year, through the decade. And then these are the people that before they know it, they are, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years old. And they really haven't made anything of their life, especially anything that they ever wanted to feel fulfilled inside. And that's why I always promote thriving or focusing on thriving rather than surviving. Because what does thriving actually mean? Well, thriving means within your current circumstances and your current reality, you are going to make the best moves that you possibly can to be as optimal as you can and move forward and thrive, not just survive and get through the day, but seize the day. And that different perspective goes hand in hand with having an empowered mindset versus that victim mindset and that mentality. And it's one that sets you up to start forming the good habits that spiral into good habits, that spiral into good days, into good weeks, into good months. And that's, it's really the fundamental foundation for positive change in life. And so, go ahead.
I was just going to say, when I'm working with people, the second step we have to go over in their coaching is acceptance. And that means accepting our starting line, accepting our circumstances. So, for example, someone might say, I can't do this because of diabetes. I'm saying I have diabetes. Therefore, I have to figure out how I can do this with diabetes because I thrive with diabetes. And I love how you put that. It's about the situation and the circumstance. I compete in the competitive division with all the healthy people. And I do that so that I can show diabetics we don't need a special playing field. We're not asking for a level playing field. It takes me more work to get to the starting line. I have to do these things. I have to like manage my blood sugar. I have to manage my diet differently than other people. I have to make sure I've got the technology, whatever. But that's just a cost of admission. Those aren't things I'm victimized by because I've accepted my starting line. I've accepted that I'm diabetic and these are the things that I have to deal with and work with. Those are not my limitations.
I'd challenge you to get to the next level, even. And instead of just accepting that you are diabetic and that's an eternal thing, understanding that all of these conditions, whether it's diabetes or otherwise, have the potential for reversal as well. So that's the next frontier for you to perhaps explore, in that you don't have to always recognize with these labels and, continue to thrive within them. You can rid yourself of them. And even that is a further empowered mindset, because all things are possible. And there's certainly people, type 1, type 2 don't care, type 3, which is an interesting one not everyone knows about even, have reversed what's going on behind the scenes and live completely without any of the symptoms or circumstances of such disorders, if you will.
You're absolutely right, though. That I should say right now I have this. You know what I mean? So I like what you said, though, because it is true. And I talk about this all the time. Everything changes and evolves. And we do get preconditioned. I find myself doing it sometimes, too. I could be talking to somebody who's talking about a new way to pursue speaking opportunities. And my instinct is defend what I'm already doing by rejecting theirs. That I talk about the empowered mindset and the open mind and the growth mindset all the time. And yet still my instinct is to go, no, don't challenge my thinking. So I'm glad you brought that up because you're right.
The specific language we use in regards to anything external, but especially internal and about ourselves, is essential. And because you're open to kind of exploring these kinds of things, I also just caught you saying you made a dichotomy of healthy people and yourself. You said there's the healthy people, and then there's me in the leading up to
yeah.
So now you have cast that spell upon yourself of there's healthy people, then there's me. I'm not part of that group. I am the out group.
No, you're right. Because I was actually thinking earlier about victim mindset, and one part of it is that it isolates us. It intentionally isolates us. And without intentional knowing I was doing so, it's exactly what I just did. I just isolated myself from everybody else.
Yeah, and of course, this doesn't mean anything bad about yourself. It's hard not to trap ourselves with these, little bits of wordplay. And, part of growth and improvement is always recognizing when we ourselves are faltering, because nobody's perfect. I myself also catch myself, or other people catch me, that kind of also comprehend these themes, using language sometimes that isn't in my favor. But we have to use language that's in our best favor because it's such a powerful tool. We cast spells upon ourselves with everything that we say. Our body will follow suit with what the mind tells it to do. And so why not have it, every bit of it, every word that we think or that we say out loud, be on our team and fighting for us? It's absolutely essential for everyone to consider.
Absolutely.
Awesome. And so the cancer, you said cancer came to you 4 times. Have you explored the behind the scenes of perhaps why that is? Was it the same kind of cancer every time? Was it different ones? Because nothing's random. For some reason, this occurred in your body. What do you think brought that to you?
I don't know about the first time. It was thyroid cancer. But what I can tell you is that supposedly, and this is where it gets interesting in my story, supposedly they took out the whole thyroid in 2005 when I had the surgery. However, when I got the recurrence in 2007, turns out they only took out half the thyroid. Now, it was only 2 years later, but I had already moved to Florida. The doctor that I had actually seen originally up in Massachusetts had disappeared. So I never really tried to pursue hey, what actually happened? Did I misunderstand? But anyways, it was the other side was then had a lymph node that was tumorous. So we then got rid of the rest of the thyroid. The third time, though, was a recurrence in the same area because there's still residual tissue in the thyroid bed. And So I actually have a tumor on the right side here, pressed up behind the vocal cords. That's now been there for 10 years. Because they didn't want to take it out because of where it was. They said it's not very aggressive. We'll just watch it. And honestly, if it weren't for speaking on podcasts and in front of people about it, most days I forget I have it. Now
Yeah.
the fourth one was actually treated at the sarcoma clinic at Moffitt Cancer Center, and it was just a random, like, it was actually a lipoma, but there was like a hard lymph node nodule in there somewhere too. Um, it was very on the surface level, so it was just a lot easier to take it out. But that one didn't really fit with the others, and this was just basically the one thing that I'm not sure I've ever really gotten taken care of.
Yeah. Interesting. Interesting. Yeah. The body responds in strange ways when we go kind of opening up the closed system of it. And yeah, like you said, that there could be some medical discrepancy on what they did and said they did the first time. So that's very interesting,
I'm
right?
not ruling out that I could have just been wrong because my way, I don't. A lot of, like, I was on a podcast a couple years ago in 2020, and there was a couple other guests who were cancer survivors, and this one woman who went before me, I mean, she might as well have been like the expert on her type of cancer. All right, she knew every scientific term, every procedure, every medication, every option, like, took you through the whole thing. Me, I go, yeah, I went to this place, they cut it out and gave me a pill. But I've always approached my illness as, and it's funny because of the way I started the conversation about doctors, but I want them to handle the medicine. I'm living my life. I want to live the moments in between. So I never really got too involved with the what, and my personality type, maybe, or maybe just been at the time the way things were, that I didn't want to be a student of it.
Mhm.
I wanted them to handle it so I can do every other aspect of my life.
Have you ever considered that perhaps every other aspect of your life could itself be the medicine?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, we don't have to get too much into the weeds of cancer, but it's certainly an interesting thing to explore, and one, of course, that's dear to my heart as I run the Center for Advancement in Cancer Education with a business partner, and we help people address these kind of things that are going on with themselves. And hey, what's actually the root cause for this cancer? You know, what perhaps emotional correlates and contributory factors could there have been, as there's been much scientific study behind certain emotional traumas and personality traits and habits correlating with and perhaps contributing to certain types of cancers in certain types of arenas. And that's why I always try to suggest, when someone's open-minded and holistic minded, in a sense, the exploration of these avenues, because especially when there's recurrence in a particular area and that particular area has been problematic, sometimes our body is giving us a signal, hey, there's something going on the more mental, spiritual, emotional side that perhaps needs to be addressed still. And so that's something, of course, I could always send you supplementary information as much as you'd like afterwards. But let's get into whatever you'd like to get into. What would you like to get into next? I've been asking all the questions. Why obstacle course racing? Like, I know your boss got you into that, but like, what about it really kind of gets you going to this point where, like, that's been your avenue that you've gone the whole time?
You know, it's funny because I was having a conversation with a friend the other day about how long we'll do this. And I mean, I have a friend of mine, he's 82 years old. He's done more than double the amount of races that I have. The thing is that, and there's a lot of people like me out there with a story. Um, and I think the sport does for a lot of people the same thing that it does for me. And my first race was transformative. You know, my first race, remember, I'm telling you, I had basically built a bubble around myself. And all of a sudden I found myself running through the woods, splashing through mud, climbing up over obstacles, like being like a little kid, just free, no doubt, no fear, not me against the world, me in the world. And I came out the other side with this just sort of blank space because all the things I had ever told myself that I couldn't do, I found out I was wrong. And that's, if we had a conversation about holistic medicine a day before that race, I would have dismissed the conversation.
Yeah.
And just, but my mind got open to everything. And I'm exaggerating because I've always been fine. Like, but anyways, my mind just got open to so much. And as I continued through the journey, again, with the incremental changes, my mind, body, and spirit were all developing. I saw the changes in the way other people responded to me. My personal relationships were getting better. My energy was getting better. I was enjoying life, every little thing. I was no longer afraid of physical activity anymore. I realized that I could move beyond my fears. I'm deathly afraid of snakes, and yet I spend my weekends running through swamps and up mountains. Um, every time we step out of that comfort zone, every time we step into fear, it redefines the space that we live in. It was like I had grown so cynical to defend the mindset for years. And all of a sudden, I'm like, holy shit, there's a whole world out there and it's awesome. And I want to see it and explore it and just keep going. Plus, and this, well, yeah, probably I'm an addict. Achievement inspires achievement. These are personal achievements, and that's one thing about obstacle course racing is there is a unique opportunity to be inspired in every race. It might be the obstacle that I never beat before. It might be the fear that I overcome. It might be the adaptive athlete out there showing us what mental toughness really is. There's just so many lessons that you can take back. But the thing is that there's practical applications too, because there's a process for overcoming obstacles. And it's the same, whether or not we're talking about climbing over an 8-foot wall or a metaphorical obstacle in our life. We have to define the obstacle. We have to identify what are the gaps, what are the skills, what are the knowledge, what are the whatever, something else resources that we need to acquire in order to overcome the obstacle. We have to learn how to do it. We have to acquire those things. We have to embrace failure throughout that process. We have to maintain an unwavering belief in our ability to achieve in order to get through. I would not have been able to leave my job with zero safety net 6 months ago to pursue a dream had it not been for obstacle course racing. I would not be able to handle a lot of the catastrophic life events that happen. And by catastrophic, I mean like my fridge dying in 5 o'clock in the morning, like these things that happen that a lot of us are running on full. Well, I rephrase. A lot of us think we're running at full capacity. So when life gets in the way, we crumble. I sometimes take a day to sulk when things get in my way, but I only take the one day. And then I look at it like any other obstacle. So it's really doing a lot of things for me. It's teaching me the skills that I need to excel and to thrive in life. It's teaching me about mindset and perspective. It's also humbling because it's something else that, when you called me out on the me versus healthy, whatever, I often say that there is nothing special or unique about me, because the thing is too, everyone out there has a story. And it's just so inspiring, and nothing inspires progress like progress. So when you just take these steps forward, and you got to keep in mind, 10 years ago, I would have never thought anything that I do right now would be possible.
Yeah, it's really interesting how disconnected from the inner child a lot of people are. And one of the first points you raised on why obstacle racing is something that you enjoy is because it's like play. And that's so essential because play, I think, is a natural part of the human experience, and it's a built-in one. It's one of the first, it's an instinctual thing within us when we're young to just walk around the world and pick things up and play with them and move them around and interact with them and just be hands-on and ingrained and immersed with the kind of environment around us and work on things in creative and interesting ways outside of the norm. And then as adults, when we stop playing, whatever that might look like for that particular person, we really start to lose a part of ourselves. We lose not only an enjoyable, and therapeutic part of ourselves, but also the part, like you said, about creative problem solving, contemplation, and having to restructure how we think about something and come up with solutions. And then perhaps, I'm sure you or other people maybe after a big race or a big event or obstacle course thing that you overcome might experience, you go home and get into your everyday workflow, and suddenly something that you were trying to figure out for like a month just makes sense because your brain is kind of kicked into high gear and kind of shifted gears a few times and got kind of, rearranged and jumbled up in that way that kind of unlocks an inner potential. not just the creative potential, but then that intellectual application of what we might be creatively able to come up with. Have you ever experienced that?
100%. Part of my routine is I stretch for about 20 to 30 minutes every night, sometimes longer. And I use that as a meditative practice. These are long holds. I do box breathing, and I might visualize something for the first couple of minutes, but then I just try to count my breath and just let my mind drift. And every once in a while, the problem that I didn't even know I was thinking about just presents the simplest solution for me. Literally the simplest. It might be something that, because I can overcomplicate anything. All right. Like, and I mean anything. You give me a paper bag and I will find 17 different ways to get stuck in it. So, but and it'll be one of those problems where maybe throughout the day, even right now, it's in the back of my head and it's taking up real estate and I'm trying to put the pieces together and I'm considering all these other, like, what to do, what to do. And then I'll get out there and I'll clear my brain to the best of my ability, get my heart rate down in the low 40s. And I just sort of just try to wait for it. And it does. Sometimes it comes to me in the simplest form. It might just be, hey, send Zach the text. Like it might be like, oh, just say, hey, man. And like, you never know. Like, I think I'm playing chess when sometimes a checkers move is going to be appropriate. So, but you can't do that. You know, if we want to listen to the answers or hope that the answers come to us, we have to shut up. And that's probably one of the things that held me back for so long is I was never quiet, even in my own head. I was always demanding. I was trying to solve the problem. I was trying to force an answer. And I'm not a religious man, but I'm a spiritual guy and I have a relationship with God. And the more often that I let God fix my problems for me, the more often that God fixes my problems for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's such an essential part of the equation that you just mentioned because it's become very glamorized, especially in the self-help and then motivation, inspiration kind of chapter of the internet in the, push harder, work harder, work harder, work hard, never stop, never stop, never stop. And kind of having that like brute force mentality, but that's a bit short-sighted and I think sells someone themselves short in the sense that if you don't stop and pause and recalculate or calculate in the first place, hey, which direction am I applying this brute force into? Or like, hey, like has another avenue opened up? And you don't kind of just like occasionally when due sit back and allow an avenue to kind of reveal itself to you, then you might just brute force yourself into the wrong direction for a long time and not necessarily get the results you're mentioning. And so, yeah, I think there's certainly an inherent need for spiritual guidance and, the pausing and kind of observation of the metaphysical guidance that we might be being exposed to at any given point. And sometimes those messages might come and go. They might not always be right there. Sometimes you might just be having to focus on what's already been given to you. But I think when the opportunity presents itself, it's important to take that opportunity to kind of think what might be being thrown your way.
I had an issue, personal issue, some that with the health insurance company that happened last week. We exchanged a few useless emails. So immediately the anxiety and anger started to just go through the roof. And I was like, I had to, I don't know, probably threaten somebody to get a phone number. And I did, but I was really busy last week and I didn't want to deal with it over the weekend. And so I decided to this morning. But for those 5 days, including last night when I'm trying to sleep, as much as I wanted to pretend, it was weighing on me and not in a good way. It wasn't worry, it was anger. It was creating resentment. And before I made that phone call today, I prayed and I was just like, hey, if you can handle this, you got this. Like, I didn't ask for the resolution. I asked to have it taken off of me because I can't impact the outcome of that. I mean, come on, you tried fighting the health insurance company? I have. And I've managed to actually move some mountains from time to time, but it probably cost years of my life to do it. And I'm like, this isn't going to be worth it. So whatever happens, happens. 8 minutes later, it was resolved. That includes hold time. And I'm like, okay. And the point here is whether or not it be a God, universe, or just sometimes just even just 20 minutes of breathing, not thinking about it is better for you. Like because I said that prayer, I was less tense on that call. Whether or not it impacted, whether or not God even pays attention to my health insurance or not isn't relevant. It's that I didn't feel toxic for those 8 minutes.
Mhm.
I didn't feel it because we're the ones who feel the stress, and stress is a real thing, as you know. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and I think it's interesting you make a point because I'm going to make a pretty fiery post about this later this week. I think hustle culture is a facade. I think the whole thing is 100% bullshit because hustlers don't post about it. They're hustling. You're never going to see me post about how hard I'm working. I post because it's part of my job, but I'm never like, hey, getting it done every day, working hard for 15 hours. No, if you are, you don't have time for that. Like, come on, that's gym bro talk. And it's not what successful people are doing. And that said, I actually made a couple posts last week about the difference between rest and then giving your excuses a rest, because there is a time. And for me, the barometer is this: is it intentional? And is it taking me closer to or further away from my goals? What I mean by intentional is I don't feel like getting off the couch might just be pure laziness. So, like yesterday, my wife and I did not want to go do our workout. We were just being lazy because we didn't feel great, but we weren't sick. We weren't injured, right? So, we didn't need more rest. We had to go do what we did. We had a great rest of the day. But there was a time a week and a half ago when I was coming down with that illness there, and I had to rest. Rest was what was going to take me closer to my goals, because if I kept pushing, if you don't take care of number one, there is no number two.
Yeah, absolutely. Rest is such it's a difficult thing for the highly ambitious sometimes because there's always work to do. Always work to do. Doesn't matter what time of day, what time of night it is, there's always work to do. But you have to view sleeping properly, or at least, when appropriate, as work.
It's
That's
part,
work.
you can't, the cars need fuel. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Cars
Yeah.
need fuel. They need maintenance. It's not laziness. It's not, I don't sleep a ton. I never have in my life, but like, I will take days off sometimes when from training, unscheduled days off if I truly feel like my body is just not responding well, and that's not me being lazy. That's how I'm going to improve better and faster. I'm playing the long game here.
Yeah, exactly. And then that's what people get lost in the weeds of, because there's no one size fits all to, okay, yeah, that's my structure for doing it, so that should be yours. And that's what people look for because, well, they're mentally lazy to the sense where they need to be told what to do and how to do it, even in, taking care of themselves. But even within oneself, it's different. It's like I've just been sleeping 4 or 5 hours a night. Is that optimal? Perhaps not. But that's just how much my body's been sleeping. And then I get up and then I'm just, okay, I'm up. I'm ready to work. So I get to work. But then last night, it was much earlier than I normally go to bed. It might have been like 10 p.m. And I was like, I could work right now, but it's going to be a little suboptimal. And also I could tell my body needs to recharge. So I slept for almost 11 hours. Like, again, is it the optimal thing to do? Perhaps not, but I get a lot done on a given day. And, I make sure to recharge when I need to. And it's just about that listening to your body, that ever fluid listening to your body in figuring out how to optimize your goals. Is there sacrifice that gets made at times along the realm of, especially an entrepreneurial person with work to do always? Yes. But do you need to also play the long game, like you very well put it, in kind of sometimes going slow to go fast, right? If a car just goes around a turn, a race car, and just floors it the whole time, yeah, they might go fast, but they might spin out as well. And then you crashed. So now you didn't even finish the lap. Like, you need to slow down a little bit, go in with tactical precision, then hit the gas again when you're coming out of that corner, and then you'll get farther and faster than if you didn't. And so it's really the same thing with and recovery. And it's up to an individual to know if they're coping or being lazy, or if they are truly in need of some tactical rest for some
That's what I
time.
was going to say too. Because we make reactive decisions too much. Like, just because I don't sleep well last night has no bearing on whether or not I should have got up and do my workout tonight. It, as a matter of fact, a friend of mine and I were talking about it earlier, that if there are days where I just have to accept that, okay, I don't feel good today. Like, because I wake up in the morning, maybe I had bad sleep apnea sleep, like who knows? There's any number of things that went wrong. And going back to bed for 45 minutes is not going to change it.
Yeah.
So get up and do it. If I've been running hard for 3 weeks and I feel like I'm a little run down, then I might readjust not just one day. I might readjust the next 4 days and say I'm sleeping until 5:30 instead of 4:30. Because I need that extra hour of rest. But that's like saying that's like me sleeping in on a Sunday, having a great 10 hours of rest, and then saying, okay, good, I don't need sleep ever again because I feel good. It doesn't work that way. Like we shouldn't, these things don't exist in a vacuum.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always about that constant reassessment and reevaluation of what the best move on the board is moving forward. And you nailed a key point that is always one of my core tenets as well, as you have work to do. A good man has work to do. There's always work to do. I don't care if you slept great, slept poorly, slept not at all. There's work to do. It's got to get done. If you don't do it, it's not going to get done. You're not going to get to where you need to be. Try again next time. Sorry. So, too bad. So sad. You didn't sleep. People have this caught upness of, ooh, oh, now I'm tired. No, okay. I guess I can't do my work today. I guess I got to do a little less today. You got to do what you got to do, man. And again, this is a gendered thing.
It's about path forward. Oh yeah. So please, if my wife heard us talking about oh, I don't feel good, she could stand on her head like for what I might consider a death cold. She's so much more tougher than me.
Why is that?
I mean, that's why it's the running joke amongst women that the man flu or the man cold, and how I guess overreactive men can be about the sniffles compared to. I'm paraphrasing a joke here. I'm not the one who made it, but but speaking for me, she's right. Like, give me a broken arm over the freaking cold sometimes. It's tough because if I lose my cognitive ability, that's all I have. And so when I'm like literally just feeling it all right here, like those are the tough days to get through. But to your point, you have to. And that's why like when we were supposed to, I believe it was Monday, and I had to reschedule. That's because I was in no position to be on camera. That didn't mean I was in bed.
Yeah.
Like I still had to find whatever path forward I could. I wasn't going to optimize and be at my best, but I still had work to do. I still had things to be able to get in there. And, I remember back when I was a private investigator, I was doing surveillance on this guy in Orlando. I used to do surveillance for somebody who worked for an insurance company. So it was mostly insurance related stuff. And I felt terrible because this guy is outside painting his garage for like 3.5 hours. Supposedly he's been injured and all this. The thing is that and remember, I just take the video and turn it over. The guy was injured.
Yeah.
Anybody could see that he was injured, but he had work to do. He had the garage to paint, regardless of him being injured or not. So I hope whoever saw the video saw that the guy wasn't faking, but that's what they want to see. Just because he was hurt doesn't mean he doesn't have responsibilities. And that's somebody who's looking out for their family. That's somebody who's going to be able to get things done in their life because despite the hardship, he was out there getting it done.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And obviously, a recorded meeting has some of the work of doing a recorded meeting is making sure you are in a state to show up and make it worthwhile, obviously. So that's, a different circumstance. And I don't necessarily say that that's a bad thing to have said, hey, let's wait on that. That makes sense. That's just tactical, right? You don't want to be again, over ridiculous dummy about anything that we say and say, yeah, you have to do everything all the time. There's always a nuance. But, my thing is, if you're tired, you just got to do something. I hate when I see grown men just even mention that they're tired. I don't care. Nobody cares. Nobody has ever or will ever care that you, sir, are tired. Why even say it? Why even mention it?
I'm only smiling because that's probably my only chief complaint, and you're absolutely right.
Nobody fucking cares. It doesn't affect anything. You're either here or you're not. We're going to have the conversations that we have to have. The task needs doing that has to have. It doesn't matter. Like, have you ever cared if someone else is tired?
Other than my wife, because, I care about how she feels. No, of course not. Like, you're right. And the thing is, like, when I've said it myself, I'm like, it doesn't matter. I think there's a comfort in complaining sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a comfort in complaining, and then it's
And
an
we seek a little validation and
yeah.
but that's what it is too. It's still not healthy.
Yeah,
You're right.
it's
They don't care. It's
and then
annoying.
it's casting a spell on ourselves to perform worse instead of like mustering up that internal fire and saying, yes, I am tired, but I'm getting it done. It's, oh, I'm tired. I guess I'm going to perform less. Or, whatever the task at hand is, it's like it casts you into that subpar state. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, even if you will. And these are the things that are happening on a day-to-day basis at such a baseline level. People's own language is wrong. People's own language and what they choose to say is shooting themselves in the foot left and right. And then they wonder why their feet hurt. They wonder why they get nothing done. Yeah, it's such an essential thing. But I want to touch on what you just mentioned because I haven't personally heard about that, male female joke that you just mentioned, but I don't doubt it because most men out there are just overgrown little boys. Men as a whole have mostly failed to grow up and are running around like a bunch of little boys that, yeah, perhaps when they do get anything that's going on with them, whether it is a little sniffle or they're tired, it ends up being the end of the world because they can't handle anything.
According to Harvard Health, Oxford defines man flu as a cold or similar minor ailment as experienced by a man who is regarded as exaggerating the severity of the symptoms.
That's Harvard Health. That just shows how much of a joke the
Well,
institute.
no, I mean that's why they're calling it. The whole thing is about a joke. It's every one of these is a joke because it's the man flu is a colloquial term referring to the perception that men experience more severe symptoms when afflicted with the common cold. This is used in a self-deprecating manner. That's why it's a running joke. It's making fun of men like me who overly complain about things like the cold. And I say like me because, again, that's the one that I hate the most. It's the little nuances. I dealt with a massive infection head to toe. And while that's what I missed last week for, and while rescheduling a podcast, I still sat at my desk and did work all day.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome, man. And that's an example of, again, what you really need to be doing as a man. That there's things to do. There's always things to do. When, I raised a point just now, and I'm not sure if it's a point that you agree with or not, but, why do you think the state of manhood is in such the abysmal state that it is?
I feel like a lot of it just goes back to the same almost the same thing as I was talking about with the food and perception of health is we were force fed one thing for so long, and I'm going back to saying the probably 80s and early 90s, and then there's just been a an exaggerated left field away from that. Like it's almost like a rebellion away from that image to the point where I don't know if I'm saying this right, but I don't disagree that there is a problem. And I'm going to say it's not just men, by the way, because I think a lot of these things do affect all of us in terms of like laziness and excuses and our self-perception. But it's almost like there's been a rebellion against what's the word I'm looking for? Not masculinity, but I'm not answering this very well, Zach.
That's all right.
I agree that there has been a shift, and I feel like it's a counterculture shift that to what the old image of what a man is supposed to be. And whether or not you agree with this or not, I also don't think that the image of what the man is supposed to be, the Marlboro Man is not my icon. All right. Like I embrace vulnerability as a superpower, and anybody can go ahead and tell me I'm not a man because I'm comfortable sharing about shit that I think about or feel about. Like I'm not looking for sympathies or hugs. I help people by talking about fear and taking away the name of it and taking away that fear by naming it. I disagree that men shouldn't experience fear. If you don't experience fear, I think that we're missing something psychologically. I do think that men, and I think everybody, but if we are talking about like genders here, yeah, men should experience that fear and move forward anyways, and part of that though, for me is the way I'm able to do that is I voice my fear. and then it no longer has that power over me, and then I'm able to help others with that. And I don't mind. And by the way, when I do speak about things that are a little more vulnerable, and when I share them in videos and stuff, I get people trying to bully and come at me, and I'm like, bro, look behind me. You really want to tell me that I'm not tough? You want to look at the shit that I've been through and tell me that I'm not tough just because I can share about things that have scared me in the past? Like, go on with your gym bro self. I'm cool.
Yeah, there's certainly been a false dichotomy that's been solidified in the small-minded people's minds, in that there is, the stoic traditional masculinity, which is beautiful, and the emotional at all side of men as well. And of course, the extreme, perhaps in any direction without the other, is an absolute mess, right? I would say that an extreme stoic man, I think I did on this side, an extreme stoic man is still probably a much better and safer man than the extreme emotional men. But the true essence of masculinity contains both. The true essence of masculinity, perhaps at a baseline, you are, staying at that more stoic level and able to, withstand the barrage of reality, but also being able to dip into the emotional side of existence not only helps you figure out yourself and how to best navigate the world as a man and regulate your emotions and regulate your thoughts and regulate your relationships with other people, but it also prepares you when you are in touch with this side of things to have the best relationships with other people, to care for other people properly, because that's a core masculinity tenet as well. Masculine figures are the protectors, the caregivers. They are the ones that ensure all under them or around them are well. And how can you do that if you don't understand the emotions, especially as a straight man? If you're going to hang out with women and have a wife or whatever, and you're not going to understand emotions and be closed off to emotions entirely, you're just going to have a bad time. Like, everyone's going to have a bad time. We need to show up as men with these people that, okay, we don't act out of our emotions, but we surely understand them in ourselves and in other people. That's the middle ground nuance that's lost in both sides, whereas the glamorization of just pure stoicism and, hardened men, and then obviously on the other side, the sniveling, whiny, emotionally unregulated men out there.
Well, you hit the nail on the head when it's about control. It's about regulating the emotions. It's because denying our emotions, like in that stoic whatever statue, that denying our emotions only leads to losing control of our emotions. So being able to experience things, being able to, recognize them and not letting them run amok on us, that's how we are able to be more effective. Now, you got to keep in mind here, I'm grading with a curve on this one, all right? Because I've been sober 10 years, almost. Up until 10 years ago, the only emotion I had was anger. So I didn't have the ability. And by the way, the first 2 years were rough because it was like the first time I ever really experienced sadness. And the only times because I just didn't know how to process these things. So I was unhealthy with it because I was trying to deny them and to keep up some sort of facade. And I didn't want them just releasing out into the world like a volcano either, because that would have been dangerous. Yeah. So I think I kind of slowly let them leak out over the years until now I can understand them more. And honestly, I've learned more about myself in the past year than I probably did the last 44, 45. And that's where I'm able to recognize things more in myself, and I'm able to recognize when the emotion is about to take over. I also don't feel the rare times that I just simply feel sad. I know that I can move beyond sadness. It doesn't last. It's not something I need validation on. I don't need hugs. And I also don't need to lie on the couch and feel bad about it. It's a feeling. It's okay to have it. It's not okay to sit on the couch and think about it all day. And I also know that when I get up and I start moving into life, that feeling goes away.
Yeah, I'm certainly not someone that's against the exploration of altered states of consciousness and whatnot. But of course, one should spend the majority of their time in sobriety, because that's when you really come to comprehend yourself and understand yourself at a baseline level. And it's interesting that what you've shared just there, because anger itself is a secondary emotion. Nobody is really truly angry without there being a primary emotion behind that. Anger is more of a symptomatic emotion, if you will. And you said when the anger went away, that element, that layer stripped down, and what was behind it was actually deep sadness.
Oh, for
Anger
me,
is
I was
kind
going
of
to say it was
that.
fear.
What's that?
I was going to say it was fear.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned sad. It could be both. It could be both, right?
Yeah, my sadness was just something else that came that I had been denying for 35 years. It wasn't necessarily, it was just one of the emotions that honestly, I don't think I had really experienced or processed in forever. But I think my anger and resentment issues were manifestations of fears that I wasn't willing to face or recognize. And I think a lot of it was trying to keep up that false bravado and show that I'm tough, I'm not afraid, and blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, I can talk about it, I can act like it, but I was still afraid. And so it would manifest in anger and resentment.
And so do you feel in those times you were disingenuine in behaving those ways, or do you think you were just trying to, like you were genuinely trying to kind of make that the reality?
The second one, I at the time I didn't have the clarity that I have now. So I didn't recognize that my anger was a reaction to fears that I wasn't paying attention to. And so no, I was if I was trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, I was trying to do it because I thought I should and because I thought I could.
Yeah. And it's beautiful that you've gone through all of these experiences and really done that internal work and continue to do that internal work and now have dedicated at least a large portion of your life to helping others do the same. So, can you talk about how it is that you work with other people now? Are you like working as a coach? Are you working as like a team session leader? Like, what ways can people work with you that have liked what you've said today and are interested to kind of explore themselves in these ways?
Well, I am available for keynotes as well as virtual conferences, virtual events, and meetings. I am working with teams. I am coaching one team, about 15 people right now, and we are taking them through a process of what I call resilience as a process. Understanding their purpose drivers, acceptance, like I talked about earlier, priorities and discipline, self belief. With individuals, though, I'm coaching a couple different people on setting meaningful, purposeful goals and taking decisive action towards them. And I mean meaningful goals. All right. Like the people that have come to me with like silly things, like, I want to get promoted. And I'm like, that's not, come on, let's think bigger. So we're talking about big, giant, limitless dreaming, trying to get them outside of their comfort zones. And then we're creating tangible goals based on those broad visions and then specific action plans to drive them. So earlier we talked about how, losing weight wasn't enough for me. Well, it still starts with a vision of what you want for yourself and how you look and how you feel and how you interact. And so that's ultimately what was for me is I wanted to be able to look and feel and act a certain way. And then we're able to put those specific tangible goals together. Then I just become an accountability partner and a thorn in their side until they get it done.
That's awesome. And have you had any like great success stories of people that have transformed their lives working with you that you'd like to share? Like something that someone's accomplished that was really cool or anything like that?
I've only been at this for 6 months here. So as far as the individual coaching part, well, technically I've been doing it for 25 years, but on my own, I've been doing it for 5, 6 months. There was one guy that I was working with who sustained some injury, actually sustained some trauma, and he had not been very mobile and he wasn't walking. He was actually concerned to walk because of his leg giving out and then re-injuring it. He has a nice big dog and he wasn't taking his dogs for walks, which is one of the things. So we decided to make that the tangible objective of basically getting his life back where he had control over it. We thought this was going to be like a 90-day process. He started his walking his dog like 3 days later. And as a dog owner, when he sent me that picture of his dog with a big, giant, happy smile, honest to God, if I didn't need money, I would do this for free.
Yeah, yeah, that's huge, and that could get into a whole conversation of the wonder that is, animals and animal stewardship because, I always I always see, I have two dogs, and I always see them as like reflections of myself. And like when I have my life together more, they are healthier because by extension, I am, better with their food and giving them, different, better timing food and better food, and then taking them on walks, and their nails are, trimmed well, and they're overall happier and whatnot. And and then they inspire me. Not that I, need to coaxing to be fit. Obviously, you see my home office is my home gym as well. But, to go on those walks, sometimes like it's an inspiration. Like, hey, yeah, they need to walk. I'm gonna walk them. I've been in meetings all day sitting on my fucking computer. Like,
well, I remember distinctly what it felt like to walk my dog in Florida at 90-degree weather when I was 240 pounds. So, and I hope I always remember that, because it is, I do this now, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. I hope I'm doing something. I may or may not be doing this. I may be doing ultra marathons. I may be canoeing. Who cares? Because it is about being healthy in an active lifestyle and being fit enough to enjoy life. That is the vision. That is what I'm trying to do. It's just these things are the tangible goals that get me there. And I do it. It's not a chore to walk my dog. Whereas 10 years ago, it was.
Absolutely. And then it's the mental side of it as well. Yeah, it's become physically easier, but when you install those mental frameworks, it gets a lot easier as well. When it's not, I have to walk my dogs. It's, wow, I get to walk my dogs because I have these wonderful dogs and I have these wonderful legs, and we could have this experience together. And, it's that important mental shift type work that can really be transformative in someone's life.
Absolutely.
And so, Nick, we have talked about a lot of good stuff here. And so if someone does want to take advantage of any of those ways that they can work with you, how can they find you? Do they go to your website first? Would they
tell you what? Yeah, absolutely. stridemotivation.com and book a call. Let's just talk about the vision. Let's just talk about those goals. I'll give you 30 minutes of free vision questioning there.
Awesome. Well, I certainly encourage anyone to take him up on that offer. And so at the very end here, I'd like to ask, is there any specific closing message you'd like to leave our viewers and listeners off with? If they got Men in Black, memory wiped and forgot this whole thing, what would you really like them to go home with today?
Just start. Take the first step. Take the first measure. Drink that first glass of water. Take the first 5-minute walk. Find out the healthy replacement food. Just take one little step today towards increasing or improving your health.
Love it. Just do it. The time is now. There's no better time than right now to take that first step to being where you want to be, because otherwise you're just wasting time. Nick, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
A big thank you goes out to Nick for coming on the show. I do hope that this episode serves as a point of inspiration for someone that might be going through some troubling times, whether that's a accident that you may have suffered through, or whether that's a sickness or ailment that you're currently facing. If you're still alive, you're still in the game. And with the tools of the internet that are plentiful, you can more than ever figure out what it is that you can do to get yourself moving in a positive direction. So be sure to check out his content. He's got a lot of content where he talks about the mental schemas that he uses to live a healthier and happier life. Of course, there are several other mental health oriented episodes on my show that you can check out with a lot of fantastic professionals as well. It's very fascinating, the tie between our physical health and our mental health and our spiritual health and happiness. And that's why I talk about all of these different matters on the show and not just one, because you can't have one truly without the others. Be sure to check out ZachTheHealthKing.com. Check out all the things I have going on there. Find the show on different platforms if you'd like. Connect with me on socials. Please let me know in the comments what you thought of this episode. What did you think of Nick? What did you agree with? What did you disagree with? Be sure that you're subscribed to the channel wherever you're listening. This way you get notified when I post a new episode. And if you'd like to consult with me about any of the matters you see in my episodes or anything else that you have going on in your life, whether it's a matter of physical health, mental health, emotional health, relationships, or anything else that you'd like to get my thoughts on, go to zachthehealthking.com, click on the consultation buttons, and I'd be glad to lend my thoughts to whatever it is that you have going on. You're listening to the Health King's Court. Ancient wisdom, modern health.